Chad, the burden of proof through the federal investigation for the sports gambling through illegal wagering and illegal bookmaker in California. His name, Matthew Boyer of Orange County. It has led to, and they were investigating him and raided his home last year. It has led to Ohtani's interpreter being fired from the Dodgers for allegations that he's connected to this. Upwards of $4.5 million that Ohtani and his lawyers say was stolen from Ohtani. And the story has developed from about 24 hours ago through the LA Times with further detail, where Major League Baseball says, and I think this is very important, the way they worded this, Ohtani is not currently facing discipline. And Major League Baseball did not know of this connection ahead of time until it was reported, until the interpreter was fired. Whether you believe that or not, we can certainly discuss. But Boyer apparently has had no contact with Ohtani, just through the connection of the interpreter. There's another
Mizuhara is the interpreter.
There's another investigation. There was another federal investigation that had ties. It doesn't necessarily connect to this, but I guess it could, with Yasiel Puig, who was also named in a separate investigation. But the interpreter, in two different accounts, is saying two different things. He says that it was upwards of $4.5 million in debt, that Ohtani covered his gambling debt, but said that Ohtani had zero involvement with any of the sports betting that the interpreter was actually involved in. Then he changed his story. He said that he still didn't have any involvement, but that they didn't necessarily cover the gambling debt either, which Ohtani's side is saying, we didn't do anything. This was pure theft, the millions. The guy says he never bet on baseball. We've heard that before. It was only soccer, NFL, college football, and NBA. And the policy with Major League Baseball is you cannot bet on diamond sports, meaning baseball, softball, but you can bet in legal states on other sports. That's basically what the NFL is doing now. But Ohtani didn't speak to reporters. The Dodgers are playing over in Korea, which I believe these games count.
Yeah, the first two games of their season.
Okay, the Dodgers are playing over in Korea.
They're 1-1 after today.
Dodgers PR, they were staked out in front of the locker. He's a new interpreter now through the team. And this is the face of baseball. He is Major League Baseball. He's the Babe Ruth of our era. And like it or not, he's connected to a guy who was betting through a bookmaker because you can't do it legally in California on an app. Chad, this is going to be just the surface level of where this story takes us, because there will be digging here. There's a federal investigation going on. The bookmaker, the bookie's home was raided a year ago. And you have the guy that's been connected at the hip to Ohtani with $4.5 million owed to this guy. They've connected it back. No, Ohtani, at this point, has no involvement, and thankfully has no involvement in this. But the way that we view betting on baseball compared to the other sports, where if Calvin Ridley bets on his team at the time, it was the Atlanta Falcons, he's handed a 1-year suspension. It was indefinite, but it's a 1-year suspension. He could apply for reinstatement a year later, and he did. He was reinstated. In baseball, it's different because everyone thinks of Pete Rose. And while if you bet on any other sport in an illegal situation like this, if a player did this and it was on basketball, you could face a 1-year suspension. If you bet on baseball, we know what happens. And it is the banned punishment, like Pete Rose. I am fascinated by this because while the NFL, through the last 2 years, has been rolling through these, this guy's suspended for 6 games because he was betting on team property. this guy is suspended for a year because he bet on the NFL and bet on football. It's different because we don't hear about NBA players betting. We don't hear about Major League Baseball having these sports betting companies dig up and go back to who's betting when, where, what, and how. And we don't see it in the NHL for the most part. Apparently, these guys just don't do it. But it's all about the perception, right? The NFL is trying to just have the perception of we've been against Vegas, now we're in Vegas, and we want you to know that we're going to do everything possible to make sure the integrity of the sport is protected. And it is a wide open field in baseball. It's got to be. And they don't want to have that perception because, well, they can't ban for life 30 players. They don't want to do that. But in this case, Ohtani, if for any reason he's connected back to baseball, sports, and gambling, this is a hell of a story that could just be getting started. Because they can't just say, you're suspended for a year. Because Pete Rose is back in. Pete Rose is, he's got exactly what I think we all agree he should have.
And we don't know that he's bet anything yet.
No, I said that he has no involvement. But I think it is key, the quote from Major League, not currently facing discipline. They phrase that well because they're still waiting on more information.
It's an amazing intersection of Japanese culture with American reputation in this story. And here's what I mean by this. If this story was simply, and I've read through the timeline. By the way, Mike Gunzelman, Gun Show, has a great thread on X right now detailing kind of his thoughts on this. But I know OutKick's got stories on it. Yahoo Sports has a great timeline of going through it and the confusion of the timeline of all this. If you told me simply that Ippei Mizuhara, this interpreter and good friend of Shohei Ohtani, going back to 2013, was in trouble with a bookie and needed money and went to his friend and someone that he works for in Ohtani and requested the money that he has easily, and he helped him out with that money to get his buddy out of a jam. I wouldn't think anything of it. I think, man, Ohtani's just a really nice, gentle soul, good guy,
sure,
helped his buddy out of it. And that's what it was leading to with statements from a lot of different people on a lot of different sides. And then he says that it's theft, that he stole from him, and that his legal team is involved and he stole. Is this an issue of honor and dishonoring yourself if you're Shohei Ohtani and you're helping out someone that's in trouble with an illegal bookmaker? Or is it something much darker than that? And we can go down the rabbit hole with that all we want. Is it something more with Ohtani's involvement? Is there some sort of fixing going on here? Did he know more about it? Was Ohtani gambling with the illegal bookmaker as well? We don't know that, and in fact, everyone is saying that's not true, including the guy being investigated, the illegal bookmaker. So we'll pump the brakes on that for a second. But isn't this story much more cut and dry and easily explainable, if not for the accusation of theft to the interpreter?
Well, I think they don't want any money exchanged or transferred between Ohtani and this guy, the interpreter, Mizuhara.
Yeah.
Because, Chad, what if he did bet on baseball? That's the only key in all of this, is if he covered the debt of games and wagers placed, albeit he's $4.5 million in debt. To me, it doesn't matter. If it got guys cover debt all the time. Professional athletes, they have all these different requests from family members, friends. Everybody's reaching out, right? In this case, it's just the fact that baseball and gambling can be involved. Otherwise, I think this is a routine deal where you're covering a friend, you're covering a coworker who's down in luck, right? They're $4.5 million in, and here I'm going to give you this to cover your debt, and we're going to move forward.
Because I have it.
Because you have an issue, and we're going to make sure you get help, and we're going to have the clean slate. But the guy also changed his story, too, with ESPN. This was yesterday, claiming that Ohtani, quote, had no knowledge of his gambling debts and that Ohtani had not transferred money to the bookmaker's associate. That's the key, is that the money exchanged is with the bookmaker, right? The associate. And it's something where if you're doing that the illegal transfer based on the bookie, that's a year suspension based on the Major League Baseball policy. Again, it's all, and who knows what this guy bet on?
Well, and look, if there's a smoking gun, there's a smoking gun, and a federal investigation will get to the bottom of. If there's text,
isn't it interesting?
If there's anything about knowledge, anything, but it is in everyone's best interest on the baseball side. MLB, Ohtani, and probably even Mizuhara, who's probably likely going to end up going to jail at some point for all this, or do something, that he stays silent on this. Because they want, if there's anything else with this, it only serves them well to cover it up and make it simply a case of rich friend helping not so rich friend out of a jam. And that's it. But the theft part of this makes it so weird. Yes. And now that it's like they've bought his silence, where he's changed his story too. I'm talking about Mizuhara.
Right, okay. But they have to say that it was theft because they've connected the money back in some way. They've traced this back, and now he's lawyered up to say it was theft. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's why the story got out. And, I mean, the Dodgers immediately fired the guy based on the accusation. So the paper trail's there to me based on how the reaction has unfolded. It's a great timeline to follow. And, again, it will continue.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, this is a story that's got tentacles. We're going to be studying this and looking at this and watching it and reading up on different things that happen throughout, because there are so many different ways this can go. And the worst possible thing that could happen for the sport, for everyone involved, is that there's any type of implication of impropriety from the sport's biggest star in Ohtani in any of this. Again, if this was just simply no theft charges were filed, the law firm didn't speak out, and, Ohtani helped bail out a degenerate gambler buddy that was in debt to a bookie, an illegal bookie, I don't think anything of it. I think everyone probably looks up and says, man, Ohtani's a good guy, a nice guy to help out his friend. And now, because of the separate timeline of what was said, what was told to media, followed by, oh, never mind, none of that happened. He stole from us.
Right.
That's where I start to get suspicious. That's where the antennas go up with everyone. They say, is there something bigger happening here? And I don't know, but we're going to be asking those questions.
As I understand it, he has a separate interpreter than the Dodgers employee who is the interpreter now, who's also an interpreter for other players in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
So that's also key, because he has the interpreter that the other players have within the clubhouse.